Welcome to memoQ Talks, where we talk to industry leaders about their experiences, lessons learned, and what works best across all areas of localization. Now here's your host.
Hey, Pascale, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good. How's the weather all the way over there in Seattle?
Oh, thankfully, it's a beautiful, gorgeous, sunny day today after an atmospheric river in June. I'm glad for the sun.
Exactly, and I'm just joking because I'm right across the Lake Washington in Bellevue here. But the rain. I mean, I don't even know if that was a thing growing up. An atmospheric river. Maybe they would just call it a rainstorm, or maybe they become more severe. I do know that when I woke up in the middle of the night, it reminded me of being in Asia during monsoon season. It was just coming down so heavy, and now the sun's out. So hey, yay!
I'll take it.
Yeah. Hey, Pascale, you have a lot of experience in the localization industry, and recently you transitioned into a consultant role, and you're building your own consultancy business, and I want to talk about that. But before we talk about what you do as a consultant and how you do it and what are the challenges and what kind of organizations you help, etc., maybe you can just talk a little bit about your background and how you got started in Loc, and maybe touch on some of the key roles that you've worked in the past.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, when I went to college, I studied linguistics, I studied philosophy and literature. It was all about language and really the meaning of our experience with language. But at the time, localization did not really exist, or it was that weird task that engineers did in software companies. And, but, I was lucky enough to find my way through localization, and because of my language skills and my language background, and I didn't know what it was. But so I started in the software industry. I was really excited to take on that journey. And what started as a temporary job, and became my career and my profession. And I think it speaks to language itself, how language evolves and language grows, and it's life itself, right? Because we always share experiences, but it also speaks about the industry and how dynamic it is. I remember starting in the localization industry, and you have to use an FTP site to transfer your files, to work with Trados to translate, and to also work with a TMS to really create the blueprint for the success of your team. And so I've been in the industry for a little more than 20 years. And I've grown with it. And I've, from a trans creator to a project manager to a leader, I've really explored all aspects of localization. And I worked for a solar industry as well, building a program there. But I spent most of my career in retail. And I was very fortunate to work for the Gap. I think one of the misconceptions, though, is when you say, oh, I work for the Gap. Oh, okay, you handle e-com. Yeah, I handle e-com, but e-com from a volume perspective was maybe 60% of what we delivered. But when you look at processes and workflows and automation, it was maybe a small percentage of what we did, because Gap, I was fortunate, it's gigantic. Not only it's on an e-com platform, it has its own distribution centers. It works directly with vendors. It has its pipeline. It has its also physical stores, brick and mortar stores. Also, it has offices around the world. And it has 4 global brands. So it has its own little universe in itself. So as a localization leader, it was an amazing environment for me to learn and to grow, because I had to deal with marketing, to packaging, labels, to operations, policies and procedures for global employees, distribution center. It grows and grows and grows. So it was one of the reasons I stayed there for so long, because I was afforded the opportunity to build my own little universe as well. So when you think about the localization program, yes, it was a localization program, but as with everything, it evolved. And as the ecosystem of the localization program grew, we became more of product language and localization, because it was about enabling global content and also delivering content in multiple languages, which is a huge difference, because it's not just translating, but it's about localizing, inclusivity, accessibility, but from a language experience layer.
Yeah, it's really cool when you can work with an organization like that, where one, you have a job, but you're getting paid to learn, and you're getting paid to kind of innovate and develop, new systems, new processes, maybe adopt new technologies. Could you talk about, something, a new process that you were part of at the Gap, or the deployment of a new technology, or a problem that you guys had to solve, and how you were able to do that as a team?
Yes. Well, one of the aspect of, or the element of our program that I'm super proud of, is that we were one of the first team within the Gap to undergo the digital transformation, and to find the translation management system that best suited our needs. And therefore, when it became a thing to transform digitally across the organization, our team was ready. We were eager to start the journey and integrating with multiple function. And I think one of the project or that I'm the most proud of is really to have worked diligently with our business, cross-functionally with so many teams, but really to our ecom and provide flexibility there, because we had a system where it was very inflexible. The tool had been built in-house. And it had been built in-house when you thought of translations, it was translation, and there was no way you could even make an update or change, or it was thought as a very linear and uniform way. But as we know, markets are dynamic, and there's nothing more reactive than the retail environment. So working with the teams on how to create a dynamic and flexible workflow using a new integration was a huge win. And from a technical perspective, but also from a professional standpoint, it brought a lot of visibility and a lot of credibility. And as a leader, you want that because there's always that push and pull for localization. Oh, is it important? It's not important. And the biggest wish is like, oh yeah, I want visibility. I want people to know how critical this is. And for me in my career, it was a bit of a whoa moment, because I gained so much visibility. So now it's like, oh, okay, I have visibility. So what do I do with this visibility and this credibility? In being able to build that trust was also a huge opportunity to create even more workflows and integration and bring more value, because now I do have a seat at the table, and then you keep growing from there. So it was an incredible opportunity to work on that.
So what advice would you give to somebody who's working in a large enterprise and maybe feels that Loc is a little bit under the radar, and they want to get that visibility, and they want people to understand the importance of what it is that what their team does, both culturally, fiscally, et cetera. So what advice would you give to that person leading the team, or to that team in general?
It's there's a couple of things that needs to be considered. I think first, as a leader, you need to be clear on your vision. You need to understand your own blueprints and where you're headed as a team in alignment with your own company, because the way I laid out the blueprints for the Loc program at Gap will be different. I mean, it's always a unique environment for each and every one of us. But to be clear on the vision is important, because then as you're setting the conditions for your success when you're creating the blueprint. Mm-hmm. And life will bring you that opportunity. So if you're not prepared to take on those opportunities that may show up, or sometimes you have to create those opportunities, but it's a two-way road. So being clear on the vision and establishing the condition for success first is important. And then also learning to speak the business, your business language, because each company has a different culture. So what does matter for your company? Because yes, localization is often undervalued or not in the mostly not the target of all the goals and this and that. But localization is not unique in this regard. I mean, you talk to other teams and design or production, they're not in high regard either. They're more of a service. So how do you flip the script? And I believe when you're really, when the conditions are set for your success, then you learn the business language and you start adapting your conversation to make a connection for your business partner to understand the importance. So for example, when I come to Seattle for memoQ's presentation, we're going to talk about ROI and talking about leveraging technology and how do you make a business case with an ROI. Often we look at ROI just as a cost saving option. Yes, cost saving is extremely important for the corporation, but I say here, yes. And if you're talking to your finance guy, of course, cost saving. But then if you have to make a case for HR, what are you going to add to your ROI? You mentioned the cost saving because it's always top of mind for everyone. But then you look at your translation management system and you're establishing the foundation. So what is important for an HR individual? It's about stability. It's about retention. It's about continuity of the business. So you need to emphasize those points. If you go and talk to your communication folks, or if you talk to your operation folks, the conversation needs to be adapted. So it's about learning the language your business partners speak so that you can elevate yourself and you can make yourself matter in their eyes, because everybody is concerned about their own goals. So you make your goals resonate with theirs.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that for every stakeholder, I guess what you're saying is that you need to understand what are their carrots and what are their sticks. And the carrots are, hey, we're going to help you increase market share, or we're going to reduce costs. The sticks are, if we get this wrong, HR team, we may suffer with retention, or, if you get some things wrong, there may be legal liability, reputational risk, so on and so forth, right? So when people understand the importance, the potential upside and potential downside, I mean, we're not just translating words from one language to another. We're helping you achieve your objectives, or avoid some pain points. So that's really important. So, you had this tremendous experience at the Gap, and then you decided at some point, hey, I want to go out and help other organizations. And tell me a little bit about that thought process. Did you do like a pros and cons to it? Because anytime you're going to go and start your own business, there is, I would think, a bit of like concern, or it could be a little bit stressful, but tell me about that thought process.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of uncertainties, but when you work in a corporations or you work in the workplace, it's a false sense of security, I'd say. Mm-hmm. And so, but I think as I grew in my role as a leader at Gap, what I came to really enjoy was coaching and guiding, and really, I call it bridging knowledge. and bridging knowledge into how do you translate your needs to your business partners, or how do you create value for your enterprise. And those are very intangible elements of the business that are difficult to quantify and grasp. But as a localization leader, it's sometimes very challenging. And this is what I want to support young leaders or seasoned leaders. And this is really what I focus, so that because I do remember how challenging it was trying to make a decision for my program and having nobody within my corporation that I can talk to, or how do you look further? What's coming next? And because nobody wants to make the wrong decision, right? And how do I choose a technology? Have I considered all aspects? Is it going to allow me to grow, or am I going to get stuck and then it's going to be too difficult? So this is what I do. I support these leaders in making, in setting the right conditions for success. And that can look very different from one team to the next. And one of my personal passion is gardening and building a homestead. So I love digging into those different aspects of the job from what I've learned over the past few decades.
That's awesome. So typically when you go in on a project, is it like, hey, we've got this problem, and we need maybe some advice or an outside opinion in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here, or do they come in, or are you coming in more as a generalist?
I think I get more of a general questions initially. And then when you start talking with your client, you realize, okay, it's more narrow than they think. But at first, it takes a few conversations to really understand. And because when you look at localization, it used to be that a localization leaders can wear so many hats and you can easily transfer from one industry to the next. But as technology and ecosystem gets more complex, the reality for a new leader or a seasoned leader is that there's just so many things to consider, and helping triage that first is really what we do. And then from there, okay, what do we want to address first to set the conditions for success? But I think what I've seen so far, and I'm new to this and I'm learning a lot too. I'm a learner, is that it starts with a more general question. But I think one of the most pressing questions that I've seen is, how do I pivot? Like, how do I take my localization program to the next level? And what's the next level? And so there's a lot of uncertainty around that.
So I'm going to come back to that in a second, but you brought up technology and selecting a technology. And I think a lot of organizations, whether they're local related or not, have a challenge of, one, determining, is there a need? Two, then evaluating all the different options on the market. You hopefully have a process to do the evaluation, and then coming to a consensus and making a decision, because a lot of times companies get caught in this analysis paralysis where we have one more set of demos and one more, fact finding discussion and so on and so forth. So how do you, do you have like a heuristic or some type of process template that you provide companies or organizations in terms of, look, here's how you determine whether or not technology can help you? And if you decide that it can, here's how you go out and do the selection of that technology. Later, we'll talk about the deployment, but let's talk about those first two.
Yes, actually, thank you for asking this question. It's actually very critical in setting, again, it comes down to setting the condition. There are several elements that you need to look into. How are you going to use this technology? Who is your audience? Are you doing a self-serve model? or is it an intake model? I mean, there's so many questions that we need to explore, so that first it's about when I say setting the condition, it's creating the blueprints. And then what kind of technology are you looking for? And how is it going to enable you to do your best work? And not only that, you have the technology, but then technology evolves, and you setting the blueprints is the first step. But the actual work is when your automation, your workflow meets the work of your business partners. Mm-hmm. And those are all critical points. And how is that going to look like? And do you have the right partners to help you set for today, but also grow tomorrow? And when you choose a technology, it's also critical to look into creating a partnership. And do you also have the team to help you set up the right process? Because setting the technology is the easy part. Creating your program and growing your program, you need a collective intelligence to run that. And the collective intelligence, it's in your team, it's with your business partner, it's the business partner of your business partner. It just keeps radiating. So there are several steps that you can take to make sure that you address all of that. And then, I do explore that with my clients.
Okay. And I mean, can you, because we're talking on memoQ Talks, my mind immediately goes to translation management system, TMSs, CAT tools, maybe BMSs. What other types of technology implementations have you been involved with or aware of in the context of a Loc team?
Well, you have integrations. I think the connectors are very important. I think from a localization and language experience perspective, you need a system that anchors you. Today is the translation management system. Tomorrow, as Gen AI and AI gets more and more integrated, maybe we're not going to call that a translation management system, but something else. And because the essence of translation will change, right? But so as a localization or language team, you need a platform that anchors you. And then it's about the flow of data and the flow of content. So how does that look like with different systems within your company? And I believe in the path of least resistance. So does that make sense to build a connector to integrate with your CMS? Or does your partner in technology that you have to anchor your program, do they provide connectors already? And so you have to start looking at that, because I think it's very important to be integrated and connected. So we did have quite our fair share of integrations at the Gap. But it's also important to consider, what if this piece of technology no longer works? How do I manage that? So as you anchor your system, you have to evaluate how to grow within your own technology. Can I easily change this piece of my platform? Or how do I grow? And how do I find that technology partner that will grow with me?
Makes a lot of sense. When we talk about AI, what are some of the more recent or more interesting applications of AI and or LLMs in the context of localization, whether that's, and we can look at, how linguists are using it, because that's where most people typically go for. They're like, oh, well, it's machine translation. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm just saying that's kind of where people focus. But I'd like to hear what you've seen in terms of the linguistic application, but also project management support or facilitation. And then maybe we could even look at business development, how business development teams are looking at, but we'll put that to the side for now. What are you seeing that's interesting? And you're like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Well, I think the unlocking of generative AI in content creation is really exciting. I think where so there's the hype and there's the actual application of generative AI. And so the actual application is in a few areas, in customer support or in a low risk area, I should say, where the content is not going to offend the customers too much and it's kind of a safe environment. And applying generative AI is good because it allows us from a language experience to remove the sometimes very difficult challenge of localizing or culture. Like sometimes as a translator, you see the English and the English makes no sense for country A, for example. Sure. But you get stuck with the English and you're like, and sometimes it's hard to get out of it as a human, right? So I think if you get generative AI and you bypass the English and you just get the content from the intention, then you can say, oh, okay, well, the generative AI is not good, but at least it's already in the same language and you don't have to go over the English obstacle, if you will.
So what I'm hearing you say, I think, is the generative AI can look at the intent of the English sentence, and instead of translating the text, it actually would interpret the intent and translate that or produce that in the other target languages.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's correct.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of times there's an issue. In fact, I just had on the last people I spoke with, they were talking about how one of the age old problems of translators is, do they translate the words that they received, or do they try to understand what the person was trying to say and translate that? And that's almost like the human application of what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think, and I like to see it that way. And I hope as an industry, that's how we're going to apply it, because there is a lot of uncertainties in terms of, for translators and linguists, oh, AI is going to take my job. And we were at Vlog a couple weeks ago when we launched the community there, and we had a question in the audience, and the linguist asked, "Why am I seeing less volume in my workload?" And there was a jump to conclusion to Gen AI, but Gen AI is a small portion at this time, and so it's probably more in terms of machine translation. Now we're seeing the impact of really, really good machine translation, because over the last 5 years, we've made so much progress with machine translation. But then, is it really less volume? Because as a leader with managing the volume for the Gap, for example, we did use machine translation. I didn't have less volume, but I had different type of works. So if we think in terms of what's the future of the translator, I mean, we used to be called translators, and now it's linguists. And now you have we're seeing an hyper specialization of everything. So with Gen AI or even machine translation, what I've seen is, oh, I don't have less volume of work, but it's way more specialized. I need MTPE, I need QA on this, and it's all at these points in my workflow where I need, it's not in the actual translation anymore. And with generative AI, it's going to be even more specialized. Oh, are you specialized in fashion? Because I need contextual in French for fashion, or I need context for German in fashion. Oh, and not something about marketing. I need for catalog, for fabric, for this. So that's where I see the trend headed. It's already been there for the past 5 years, but it's just going to continue amplifying, I think.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. What about for project managers? Are you seeing any AI or the use of AI to kind of facilitate the work that they do?
A little bit, but I think the challenge is more because the ecosystem is not quite yet ready for all that change. So there's a lot of, you see it in, for example, within this tool, you can do ABC, but it's not properly orchestrated around the ecosystem. It's pretty uneven. And so it depends what tools you have within your ecosystem. So I think it's starting, but I'm not seeing like generally distributed or evenly distributed yet.
Yeah, I think that if I was a vendor manager or a project manager that had to do job allocation, I think there might be some interesting uses for AI to help me figure out, price point wise, delivery time. It's kind of like optimizing the supply chain, basically. I need to get this job delivered by, X date. And if I rush this, and what am I going to pay? But if I slow it down, maybe I can have a different linguist depending on who's available. And so, I think there's, because a lot of that selection process is still manual. As a project manager, you might have a tool or platform that would recommend 4 or 5 different linguists, but they're not going to help you. It's less common for them to actually help you calculate the gross margin, depending on who you use, or the return time, the delivery date. Also, you might want to look into the algorithm, previous quality scores from the work that they've done. You could even get crazy and get into exchange rates and things like that. And that's just one application. I'm sure there's got to be more, because I look at, all the tools that we use, from the calculator to our phones to, LLMs. They're all, where I see it, used to make us more productive. So I would think that there would be applications for project managers, because so much of what they do is manual, and that's the difficult thing. The challenging thing with that job is, they're stuck in the middle between the customer, the linguist, the salesperson, and everybody's just, wants them to do their job more efficiently, more effectively. And so, give them the tools. That's my thought, but I don't know.
Oh, I fully agree. I think one thing that's very difficult to manage in retail, for example, because it's a reactive market, we had automated 80% of our workflows, but we needed to, maybe 20% needed to be manual, because it's highly reactive. So if it's automated, then it's too difficult to remove the automation and jump in. Right. So we had to strike a balance. The 80-20, it was perfect for us. And, but that 20% is always the high velocity, high visibility project. And you have 10 steps in the workflow. And for a project manager to know, is from 2 to 3, did they do it on time? If AI can help with this, and when you have 4 brands and it's the holidays and you're going completely insane. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you see the discussions or the requirements from, enterprise customers versus LSPs who may need an external consultant? Are they asking different questions, or are they asking the same things?
They are asking similar questions, but they're not hearing each other.
Okay. For example?
Well, there are assumptions on both hands. And so, personally, I think, this is where also I help bridge the knowledge gap. Especially working, it's about, because when you work from a client perspective, for example, you work with your vendors, but you're allowed to discuss maybe 10 or 20% of the reality that's happening within your corporation. You can't share that much. And there's a lot of assumption too from an LSP to understand what's happening, or that there's also the challenge of scalability for an LSP, right? And so how do they meet? And right now, the need and the pressure within the client, I think, is not properly yet understood from the LSP side. And there's a disconnect still.
Yeah. It's interesting because I recently spoke with somebody, two individuals who one had a lot of experience on the LSP side and one very strong on the enterprise side. And their consensus was that the LSPs are looking to optimize for cost and speed, and enterprise customers are looking to optimize the quality and the effect of the contents being localized. So they want that effect, whether that means more clicks on their site, more orders, higher conversions. And LSPs aren't measured by that. They're measured by, or they're typically measured by how many, what they're going to pay for word to the translators or the MT engine they use, and how much they can charge for the word. And so the calculus is a little bit different. And to your point, sometimes they're speaking by each other, because if the LSP could sincerely understand what the objectives of their enterprise clients are and have a conversation around helping them achieve those objectives versus just translating words, and here's your bill. Okay, here's your invoice. But if you could say, hey, we understand you want to get greater conversions, so we're not going to just translate. We're going to do SEO optimized, and then we're going to track, and we're going to do A/B testing and sentiment analysis and things like that. But that's a complicated conversation.
But that's also part of bridging that knowledge gap. So as a leader, I looked at LSP. So I always created what I call dynamic resource pool, if you will. And so I had LSPs, and I worked directly with freelancers, and I had technology and so on and so forth. But what I strongly believed as a leader, and it really paid off for us, was to look at them as real trusted partners. And sometimes it took a while to onboard, but my goal was to successfully onboard them, because their success is also my success, and it speaks to quality at the end. And so it's important to me, or it was as a leader, and that's what I'm communicating to my client, is when you onboard a leader, or you also make sure they understand the context of that content type. Or if you're changing, or if you're elevating your program to the next level, if you will, you bring them along to the conversation. And so I used to host, for example, onboarding session with my resources, because I would say, I would present what we do from a technology perspective and how it's going to be the output for them. Like, hey, this is the type of job you're going to get now. This is how it's coming from our business partners. This is the pipeline, and this is what you're going to see. So when the resource is giving the proper context and how they're getting the information, then we're all winners, because they're going to be able to get the right resources on that type of projects. And you're going to get higher quality. Not only are you going to get higher quality, it's going to cost you a lot less too, because you don't have to do an extra set of reviews for this. So you're building the trust. So yes, so you need, you need to bridge that knowledge gap.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a pretty enlightened approach, where you sit down with the people who are going to be doing the work and say, the reason we're working with you is because we need this outcome over here, and this is what we're looking at. So the more you can understand about our objectives, the better. Again, as opposed to just going directly to price or turnaround times, because then there's no real context. It's just, oh, okay, well, yeah, we'll do it this way. One of the challenges, okay, so you mentioned the benefit of, working for an organization like The Gap, is you have this tremendous opportunity to learn and develop and grow yourself. And I would imagine that, working with a variety of organizations as a consultant, you get to learn about a variety of challenges. But how do you stay ahead of the curve in terms of learning about potential solutions? And I'm specifically talking about, the evolution of technology right now. It's tough to keep up with the pace of change. but there's also, different things with, management techniques, how you measure performance, whether it's KPIs and OKRs and whatever. How do you personally, stay ahead of the curve on your professional learning?
Curiosity and connection. Okay. Connection in the sense of it's important to have a community. It's important to have open discussion with people and understand and be open to learn. I think I know what I know, but also hearing from other people, you discover completely different universe and completely different use cases. And I think we are fortunate because, when I think about business partners that did copy or marketing, they didn't have a strong community like we do have with the language industry. And so being part of smaller community groups where you can discuss in a safe environment what your challenges, and it's give and take. It's not about I'm looking to get work here or that. It's about really having a conversation and understanding what's happening and being curious. I think that's very important because I think, doing the MIT course on AI, they also highlighted how important it is to have a collective intelligence. Mm-hmm. And I love that term because I think when we look at how each company needs to be technology at the core in order to stay relevant, the complexity of everyone's ecosystem and our part into the ecosystem as language experience goes will just become more and more complex. So we need a collective intelligence to help us navigate through that and navigate within our own specific universe, which is retail or gaming or this or that. And it's just going to continue to grow.
I think that's some awesome advice and great observations. At collective intelligence or a learning organization, at memoQ, we kind of facilitate or encourage both, that we're always learning, but then we share what we learn. And there are systems and processes that we use to do that. And it's so effective, I think, because it's just otherwise, if you're curious by yourself, it's like, where do I go? Who do I ask these questions to? But if you've got 100 people all, out there acting as sponges and then diffusers of that knowledge, it can, in a relatively short time, can make a huge impact. Mm-hmm. So, and by the way, one of the things that you mentioned is being part of community organizations. And I did want to say congratulations to you, Paula, the scientific team, and everybody else who put in the effort to launch the Vancouver Localization User Group. That event was awesome. I was impressed with how many people were there. The venue was awesome. The quality of the speakers. You guys did a great job. Any plans for the next one?
Not yet. So we'll share on LinkedIn.
Okay, I know it's a lot of work. I mean, we do the Slug Seattle Localization User Group here, and it's a lot of work for the organizers. Another event that you're going to be participating in is the memoQ Day Seattle, which I should know this. I think it's June 18th. June 18th?
I believe so.
28th. June 28th.
Oh, 28th.
So either I'm going to have to call you and we're going to have to re-record this session, or we'll just leave it stand at June 28th. But you're going to be talking, right?
Yes. I'm really excited because I think, we talk about being curious and about knowledge sharing, but I think a critical part of what we do, and that's been super inspiring to me, is working in close collaboration with technology partners. And I think the more you strengthen that relationship, you can influence each other on the needs of the industry. And discovering that path and having conversation with technology partner has been incredibly inspiring to me. And so talking about leveraging technology and elevating your career, but not only your career, but also how do you create this the condition for success with technology is an incredibly important conversation to be had right now, because it's not just about cost cutting or just about not cutting personnel. There's also a bit of that maybe kind of a negative feeling attached to technology. And it's not about that. It's about how do you use technology as a tool properly and to really enhance that human experience within the work environment. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I'm looking forward to see you there. I think last year we had 30, 35, 40 people there. Some amazing speakers, people from Amazon Game Studio, Dynamic Language. We had Tucker from Nimsy Insights. And it's interesting because we'll have people who will do a deep dive on technology, but then we have people talk more about business. And then we have people who will talk about very strategic across the industry. So it's a good mix. memoQ customers, people who just want to kick the tires and talk to somebody at memoQ, or just anybody in the industry is welcome to show up and participate. Pascale, I got to ask you one last question. Nothing at all related to localization, but a recent book, article, movie, something that you've seen or watched or read that, oh my God, everybody else should see this.
Well, where
put you on the spot.
I'm totally on the spot. I think I'm a gardener, and some maybe people who will watch this know that of me as on my personal side, I'm building a homestead, and a lot of how I learn, when you create the condition for success and everything comes from gardening and learning to appreciate my ecosystem and observe how things work together. And I think also from a sanity perspective, everybody should garden. But a book that really marked me lately was The Wild Garden Mind, because it's also connected how garden applies to different areas of your life. And coming out of the pandemic and looking at how there's so much noise everywhere about AI, about this, about the election in the US and this and that, I think when it's a good way to ground yourself and to translate, if you will, what you learn, and you bring it to your environment, because at the end of the day, it's about our human experience, and let's make it worth it for me.
I think that's an awesome recommendation. I'll put it on my list. It's funny because my boys have been so involved with soccer, and they play at a relatively high level. So since we moved back to the States in 2017, last 7 years, pretty much every weekend is 1 or 2 games, and it just kind of interrupts the whole weekend. My yard has just gone to the wild side, I should say. And now my youngest son is getting ready to graduate. His youth soccer has finished. High school soccer is finished. So there's a lull until he starts playing university. And we're not going to go every weekend in university to watch him play. But I found that I have so much more free time, and I've been spending a lot of time in the yard. And guess what? It's physically, it's good exercise, right? But it's also rewarding, because you're like, oh my gosh, that tree looks so much better, or hey, pulling those weeds makes the yard look, and haven't started planting anything yet, but gardening is so fun. I mean, are you doing fruits, vegetables, plants, all of the above? What?
Yeah. So we moved to the Seattle area 2 years ago, and in the countryside to grow more vegetables. And so, and we've planted several fruit trees. So now they're very tiny. So I don't think I'm going to get fruits, but persimmons, plums, and quince, and figs, and but one thing, and you're always fine tuning your ecosystem, right? One of the challenge that I had read about in the Seattle area, and I had not really fully understood until this year, now that I have a working garden, is the slug. The slugs. I don't know if it's an issue or just a slug obstacle and challenge. It's like, whoa.
They are slow, but they are tenacious, man. Yeah. So no, well, that's interesting. That's funny. Hey, Pascale, it's always fun talking with you. Thank you so much for coming on memoQ Talks, and I really look forward to seeing you at the memoQ Day Seattle. And I did check it; it's on June 28th. So see you then and there.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. It's so great to always so great to have a conversation with you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining memoQ Talks, where we talked with industry leaders about their experiences and lessons learned to gain new insights about what works best across all areas of localization. Join us next time on memoQ Talks.